Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of ancient Rome, you might imagine noble senators in pristine white togas, debating philosophy in grand marble forums, or powerful legions marching in perfect, gleaming formation across the empire. It's a vision of order, power, and monumental beauty. But for the vast majority of people living in the heart of the empire, reality was something else entirely. For the average person, the city was a noisy, chaotic maze of cramped apartments that smelled of sewage, smoke, and a million people living on top of one another. Honestly, with the comforts you're used to, you probably wouldn't last a day. As our story unfolds tonight, maybe take a moment to drop your city and the time of night in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see where our fellow history lovers are drifting off to sleep. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the ache. It's a dull, persistent throb behind your eyes, a heavy weight that seems to press down on you even as you struggle to rise from the thin mattress. Your blanket, a coarse weave of brown wool, feels impossibly heavy and scratchy against your skin, which is slick with a clammy, unpleasant sweat. A shiver runs through you, a deep, internal cold that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. The air in your small chamber is stuffy and close, thick with the lingering scent of yesterday's lamp oil, and the faint, pervasive smell of cabbage that seems to seep through the very walls from a neighbor's dinner. You force yourself to sit up, swinging your legs over the side of the low wooden bed frame. The floorboards are cool and slightly gritty beneath your bare feet. Your home is not a sprawling villa with mosaic floors and open courtyards. You live here, on the third floor of a towering apartment block, or insula as they're called. These structures are the backbone of Rome, vast, teetering buildings of timber and cheap brick that house tens of thousands of souls. Historians still argue about the exact population density, but everyone agrees it was a tight squeeze. Your room is little more than a box, with a single high window covered by a wooden shutter, barely large enough for you and your few possessions. This bed, a small wooden chest, and a clay jug for water. As your mind slowly clears, the sounds of the city begin to register, a symphony of urban life that never truly sleeps. From the street below, you hear the rumble of a heavy ox cart, its wooden wheels groaning against the stone pavers. The authorities tried to ban such traffic during the day to reduce the congestion and noise, a fact that sounds sensible until you realize it just means the nights and very early mornings are filled with the clamor of commerce. You hear muffled shouts, a vendor already hawking his wares, his voice rising and falling in a familiar, rhythmic call. From the floor above, a baby begins to cry, a thin, wailing sound that is quickly followed by the exasperated, hushed tones of a mother trying to soothe it. Someone on your floor coughs, a deep, rattling sound that seems to echo your own discomfort. You try to take a deep breath, but a sharp, dry tickle in your throat catches you, erupting into a series of your own coughs. They are weak, but they send a fresh wave of pain through your head. Your throat feels like it's been scraped with sand. This is more than just the usual fatigue from a hard day's work. This is the insidious creep of a fever, a sickness settling into your bones. There is no medicine cabinet to open, no small pill to swallow that will chase away the headache and the chills. There is no concept of calling in sick to your job at the weaver's shop. If you do not work, you do not eat. It is the simple, brutal arithmetic of your life. A wave of dizziness washes over you as you stand, and you place a hand against the rough plaster of the wall to steady yourself. The wall feels damp. These buildings are notorious for being drafty, leaky, and prone to fire. A constant, low-level anxiety for everyone who lives in them. You feel a profound sense of vulnerability, a small and fragile being in a city of stone and a million strangers. The grandeur of the Colosseum and the majesty of the Forum feel like they belong to a different world, a world you only glimpse from a distance. Your world is this room, this body, and this growing illness that threatens to undo the fragile stability of your existence. But even as the fever builds and the aches deepen, a different feeling rises to meet them. A stubborn, quiet resolve. You have been tired before. You have been hungry before. You have felt the chill of a winter wind through the cracks in these very walls. Surviving is what you do. It's a skill honed by daily practice. Your first thought is not to surrender to the mattress, but to consider your next move. You need water. You need some kind of food. And you realize, with a sinking feeling of dread that is even colder than your chills, that you might need a doctor. This thought is not a comforting one. It is a terrifying one, filled with its own unique blend of expense, uncertainty, and strange philosophies. For now, you focus on the first step. You reach for your tunic, the familiar coarse wool of poor comfort against your feverish skin, and prepare to face the day. Your tunic is on, a familiar cage of coarse fabric against your feverish skin. The simple act of dressing has left you feeling slightly breathless, a testament to the weakness creeping into your limbs. Your gaze falls upon the small wooden chest in the corner, your pantry and treasury all in one. With a sigh, you shuffle over to it, the floorboards groaning softly under your weight. Lifting the heavy lid reveals your meager provisions. There is no bustling market kitchen here, no array of fresh fruits or fragrant herbs. Your breakfast for today, and likely for the next several days, is a hunk of dark, heavy bread and the clay jug containing a mix of water and cheap, sour wine. You break off a piece of the bread. It's dense and tough, requiring a genuine effort from your jaw. The taste is bland, overwhelmingly earthy, and as you chew, you feel it, the unmistakable, unwelcome presence of grit. This isn't a baker's mistake. It's a feature of nearly every loaf you've ever eaten. The massive stone mills used to grind the grain for the city's millions inevitably shed tiny particles of sand and rock into the flour. Historians examining the teeth of ancient Romans find them worn down, flattened by a lifetime of chewing this gritty bread. You, of course, don't know the science behind it. You only know the sensation of chewing on sand, a daily annoyance that you've long since accepted as normal. It has more texture than flavor, a thought that crosses your mind with a flicker of grim humor. To wash it down, you unstop the clay jug and take a long drink. The liquid inside is cool but not refreshing. It's a mixture known to all, a cheap wine cut heavily with water, sometimes with a dash of vinegar, while soldiers on the march might drink a similar concoction for its mild, purifying qualities. For the urban poor, It's simply a way to make the questionable water from the public fountains a little more palatable and stretch a single jug of wine for as long as possible. Scholars still debate the exact recipes and its prevalence, but for you, it's just what you drink. It tastes faintly sour, watery, and does little to quench the furnace-like heat you feel building in your throat. It is not the comforting cup of hot tea you might crave in another life, a life with different luxuries. This is purely functional hydration. This meal is a world away from the lavish banquets people imagine when they think of Rome. The platters of roasted dormice, the flamingo tongues, the endless courses of exotic fare. Those were spectacles for the very, very rich, a tiny fraction of the population. For you and for almost everyone you know, food is fuel. It is sustenance. Pleasure is a rare and unexpected bonus. Today, there is certainly no pleasure. Each swallow of the gritty bread feels like an effort, and the sour wine does nothing to soothe the raw scrape in your throat. In fact, the food seems to sit in your stomach like a stone, a heavy, undigested lump that adds to your general misery. This is not the breakfast of champions you need to fight off a gathering sickness. As you force down the last of your meager breakfast, the reality of your situation becomes clearer and more alarming. The food has not helped. The dull throb in your head is sharpening into a distinct, rhythmic pounding that seems to keep time with the distant sound of a blacksmith's hammer. A new wave of chills racks your body, making your teeth chatter for a moment. The clammy sweat on your skin feels colder now, and the small room seems to tilt slightly when you move your head too fast. The quiet, stubborn resolve you felt upon waking is being steadily eroded by a rising tide of fear. A normal day's fatigue is one thing. This is a hostile occupation of your body. The thought of the physician returns, no longer a vague and terrifying possibility, but a grim and urgent necessity. The dread is still there, of course. A visit to a medicus is expensive. It will cost you several days' wages, money you have carefully saved and stored in a small cloth pouch at the bottom of your chest. It is money meant for rent, or for a week when work is scarce. To spend it on a doctor is a gamble, a bet on a cure that is far from guaranteed. You've heard the stories. Neighbors who went to a physician with a cough and came away weaker and poorer, their ailment unchanged. Others who swore by a particular doctor's miraculous remedies. There are no Yelp reviews for this, no government board to ensure quality. It's a landscape of whispered reputations and blind faith. But the alternative is now more frightening. To lie here, to let the fever consume you, to become too weak to work, too weak to even fetch water, that is the path to ruin. The fever has made the decision for you. Your fear of the illness has finally outweighed your fear of the cure. With a heavy heart and a sense of profound reluctance, you push yourself to your feet once more. You reach into the chest, your fingers finding the small, lumpy cloth pouch of coins. The weight of it in your palm feels both pathetic and immense. It is almost all you have. Clenching it tightly in your hand, you unlatch the wooden door to your room and prepare to face the chaotic world outside. Your journey to the doctor has begun. Stepping out of your room and into the shared corridor of the insula is like stepping into a different climate. The air is immediately thicker, a pungent blend of smells you've long learned to filter out. the sharp ammonia sent from a poorly maintained latrine down the hall, the lingering odor of boiled beans from one neighbor, and the ever-present damp, musty smell of the building itself. The corridor is dark, lit only by the slivers of daylight that manage to pierce the gloom from the central stairwell. You begin your descent. The wooden stairs creak and groan under your feet, each step a protest. They are worn smooth in the middle from the passage of countless tenants, and you grip the rough timber railing tightly, your legs feeling unsteady. As you descend from the third floor, the sounds of life grow louder, more distinct. The crying baby from the floor above is now a full-throated wail. From a doorway you pass, you hear the sharp, percussive clatter of a loom, a reminder of your own workplace, and the steady rhythm sends a pang of anxiety through you. Every moment you are not there is a moment you are not earning. You pass an open door where two women are arguing in loud, rapid tones, their voices echoing in the narrow space. You don't catch the words, only the angry, frustrated energy. This is the reality of your building. There is no privacy. Your life is a semi-public performance, your joys, sorrows, and arguments overheard by all. You are a single bee in a vast, buzzing hive. Finally, you reach the ground floor and push open the heavy main door. The street hits you like a physical force. The noise is a cacophony, a wall of sound so dense it's almost tangible. The rumble of iron-rimmed wagon wheels on stone, the braying of a donkey laden with sacks of grain, the shouts of merchants, the chatter of pedestrians, the distant, rhythmic chanting of soldiers drilling in a nearby barracks. It's a city that operates at maximum volume, a constant assault on the senses. And then there's the smell. The street is a gutter. You immediately detect the overwhelming stench of animal waste, rotting garbage piled in a corner waiting for collection, and the unmistakable, eye-watering odor wafting from the entrance of a nearby fuller's workshop, where they use urine to bleach togas. There is no modern sanitation system to whisk this all away. It simply exists, a part of the urban landscape you must navigate every day. You pull your tunic closer, as if the thin wool could somehow shield you from the sensory overload, and begin to walk. The street is not a wide, majestic avenue, but a narrow, winding alleyway, hemmed in by the towering facades of other apartment blocks. The buildings are so tall and close together that they blot out much of the sky, casting the street in a perpetual, grimy twilight. People are everywhere, a river of humanity flowing in both directions. You are jostled by a man carrying a basket of live chickens, their heads bobbing anxiously. You have to sidestep a puddle of murky, questionable liquid. A group of children, their faces smudged with dirt, dart past you in a game of chase, their laughter a brief, bright sound in the general din. Your destination is a few blocks away, in a slightly more respectable quarter of the city. The physician you are going to see, one Aurelius, is a man with a reputation. He is known as a follower of the great Galen, a name spoken with reverence. Galen's theories are the absolute cutting edge of medical science, the most sophisticated and complete system for understanding the human body that anyone has ever devised. Or so you've been told. To be treated by a Galenist is a mark of receiving the best possible care, and it comes with a price to match. The coins in your pouch feel heavier with every step, a constant reminder of the cost of this undertaking. As you walk, your fever makes the world seem unreal. The cacophony of the street feels both distant and piercingly loud at the same time. The faces of the people you pass blur into a shifting mosaic of expressions: harried, bored, cheerful, grim. You see a woman at a public fountain, filling a large clay amphora, her arms muscular from the daily task. You pass a tavern, the doorway exhaling a cloud of smoke and the scent of spilled wine and roasting meat, a smell that turns your stomach. There are no street signs as you would know them. You navigate by landmarks: a particular crooked doorway, a statue of a minor god on a corner, the butcher's shop with the faded painting of a boar on its sign. It's a mental map, learned through repetition. Finally, you turn a corner onto a wider street. The buildings here are made more of stone and less of timber. They are not quite villas, but the residences of merchants and successful artisans. The air is marginally cleaner, the noise a little less frantic. And there it is, a doorway slightly grander than the others with a bronze plaque next to it. The plaque is simple, bearing the physician's name and a carving of a serpent coiled around a staff, the ancient symbol of healing. Your heart hammers in your chest, a frantic rhythm that has nothing to do with your fever. This is it. You have navigated the chaos of the city. Now you must face the chaos within yourself, interpreted by a man who believes he holds the very secrets of life and death. You take a deep, shaky breath that does little to calm you and step through the doorway. The doorway leads you into a short, dim corridor that opens into a larger room, the heart of the physician's practice, his iatrane. This space serves as both a waiting area and a consultation room. And for a moment, the scene before you makes you consider turning around and fleeing back into the relative anonymity of the street. The air inside is heavy and close, saturated with a strange medicinal odor. It's a complex and unsettling perfume of dried herbs, smoky incense, vinegar, and something else. A faint, coppery, metallic scent that you can't quite place, but which makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The light is dim, filtering in from a single, high, grime-streaked window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. The room is not large, but it is crowded with suffering. Along one wall, several people are seated on a long wooden bench, their postures a study in misery. A man with a heavily bandaged arm stares at the floor, his face pale and beaded with sweat. Next to him, a woman coughs weakly into a cloth, a thin, wheezing sound that echoes your own ailment. A young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sits on his mother's lap, his breathing shallow and rapid. His mother whispers comforting words to him, her face etched with a desperate anxiety that you recognize instantly. Seeing their collective pain does not comfort you. It only amplifies your own. You are now officially one of them, another supplicant at the altar of health. The walls of the room are lined with wooden shelves, crammed with an intimidating array of objects. There are dozens of clay and glass jars of all shapes and sizes, filled with murky liquids, dried leaves, and strange powders. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling, brittle and brown, releasing their dusty scent into the air. On a small table in the corner, you see a collection of bronze and iron instruments laid out on a piece of linen. They gleam dully in the dim light. probes, scalpels, hooks, and forceps of various designs. Historians would later marvel at the sophistication of Roman surgical tools, many of which would not be significantly improved upon for over 1,000 years. For you in this moment they look like instruments of torture, and the sight of them makes your stomach clench. There is no receptionist, no one to check you in. There is only a young apprentice, a boy of about 15, who moves through the room with a practiced air of weary indifference. He is wiping down a small bronze bowl, his movements quick and efficient. He glances at you as you enter, his eyes sweeping over you in a quick, appraising look. He doesn't say a word, merely gestures with his head toward an empty spot at the end of the bench. You take it, the hardwood cold even through your tunic. The man with the bandaged arm shifts slightly, and a faint groan escapes his lips. You try not to look. You try not to breathe too deeply. The minutes stretch into an eternity. The only sounds are the shuffling of feet, the chorus of coughs, and the low murmurs of the physician, who is working behind a heavy curtain at the far end of the room. You can't see him, but you can hear his voice, a deep, resonant baritone full of authority. He seems to be delivering a lecture more than having a conversation, his words punctuated by the occasional pained grunt from his unseen patient. The mother next to you begins to hum a lullaby to her son, a soft, tuneless melody that is almost drowned out by the other noises. It's a small, desperate act of comfort in a room devoid of it. This is the reality of seeking health care. It's not a private, sterile, and efficient process. It is a public, communal, and often frightening experience. There is no concept of patient confidentiality here. Your ailments will likely be discussed openly, your diagnosis proclaimed for all to hear. The line between clinic and operating theater is blurry at best. Some iatrea were even located in open-fronted shops, where passers-by could watch procedures unfold. We can only speculate about whether this was for transparency or simply a form of medical showmanship. You feel a growing sense of unease, a feeling that you are on a conveyor belt moving toward an unknown, but probably unpleasant, destination. The fever is making you feel detached, as if you are watching a scene from a strange play. You close your eyes, the thumping in your head a constant, oppressive rhythm. You focus on the weight of the coins in your pouch, the reason you are enduring this. You think of your small, stuffy room, which now seems like a peaceful sanctuary in comparison. A sharp clang from behind the curtain makes you jump. It's the sound of a metal instrument being dropped into a bowl. A man's voice cries out in a short, sharp burst of pain, quickly muffled. The apprentice doesn't even flinch. The woman next to you hugs her son tighter. You swallow hard, your throat feeling tighter than ever. Finally, the curtain is swept aside and a man stumbles out, leaning heavily on the apprentice. He is pale and there is a fresh, dark stain spreading on the bandage around his leg. The apprentice guides him out the door. Then the boy turns, his gaze sweeping the room, and his eyes land on you. He nods. It's your turn. With a heart that seems to be beating somewhere in your throat, you push yourself up from the hard bench. Your legs feel shaky, and for a moment the room swims before your eyes. The apprentice waits, his expression impassive, holding back the heavy curtain for you. You take a hesitant step forward, leaving the communal misery of the waiting room behind and entering the physician's inner sanctum. The space is small, more of an alcove than a separate room, dominated by a high couch-like table covered with a linen sheet and a single, ornate-looking chair. The air here is even more potent, thick with the smell of incense that fails to mask the underlying metallic scent of blood. And there he is, Aurelius, the Galenic physician. He is not what you expected. He is not a humble healer, but a figure of immense and undisguised self-importance. He is a man in his 50s, with a stern, clean-shaven face and dark, intelligent eyes that seem to scrutinize your very soul. He wears a fine tunic, not of coarse wool like yours, but of clean, white linen, a deliberate statement of his status and cleanliness. He is not standing to greet you, but remains seated in his carved wooden chair, one hand resting thoughtfully on his chin, as if he has just been contemplating the deepest secrets of the universe, and you are a minor interruption. He does not invite you to sit or to speak. He simply watches you, his gaze intense and unnervingly direct. The silence stretches, thick and uncomfortable. You stand awkwardly in the middle of the small space, feeling your fever, your poverty, and your general unworthiness under his penetrating stare. You can feel the sweat trickling down your back. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, the sound of your sandals scuffing the floor seeming outrageously loud in the quiet room. He is performing the first part of his diagnosis, observation. A true Galenist, he believes, can learn a great deal about a patient simply by looking. He is assessing your color, your posture, the way you breathe, the look in your eyes. It feels less like a medical examination and more like a judgment. Finally, after what feels like an age, he speaks. His voice is exactly as you heard it from the other room, deep, sonorous, and dripping with condescension. You present yourself in a state of distress, he says. It is not a question. It is a proclamation. Your complexion is pallid, your eyes lack luster, and your posture suggests a significant diminishment of vital spirit. The cause, he pauses dramatically, raising an eyebrow. That is what we are here to uncover. Though to the educated eye, certain possibilities are already self-evident. You open your mouth to describe your symptoms, the headache, the chills, the raw throat, but he holds up a hand, a gesture that silences you immediately. Silence, he commands, his voice firm but not loud. Your subjective feelings are but ripples on the surface of a deep pond. They are unreliable, prone to exaggeration and fear. I am not interested in the story you tell yourself about your illness. I am interested in the truth the body itself reveals to one who knows how to listen. This is a core tenet of his practice. The physician is the master interpreter. The patient is merely the faulty text that must be deciphered. There is no collaborative discussion about your health here. This is a lecture, and you are the primary exhibit. He rises slowly from his chair, a theatrical movement, and begins to walk around you in a slow circle, much like a sculptor assessing a block of marble. He does not touch you. The physical examination, as you might think of it, is a specific and later part of the process. This is the grand overview. He peers at your skin, leans in to look at your eyes without getting too close, and observes the rise and fall of your chest. The breathing is shallow, he murmurs to himself, though loud enough for you and the apprentice to hear. The exhalation is warm, but it carries a certain dampness. Interesting. This hands-off approach might seem strange, but it was rooted in the philosophical and social standing of elite physicians. They saw themselves as intellectuals, philosophers of the body, distinct from surgeons or folk healers who dealt in the messy, hands-on business of cutting and poulticing. A physician like Aurelius diagnosed with his mind. The physical interventions were often prescribed, but sometimes carried out by assistants or surgeons. Historians note this distinction between the high-minded medicus and the more practical and lower status chirurgus or surgeon. Aurelius stops his circular path and stands before you again, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. "You have recently partaken of a meal," he states. Again, not a question. You blink, surprised. "Your bread was of poor quality, containing significant grit. Your wine was thin and acidic." You can only nod, a wave of astonishment mixed with your fear. How could he possibly know that? Was he a magician? The truth is simpler. A demonstration of his keen observational skills and understanding of his clientele. He can likely smell the sour wine on your breath and knows the staple diet of the city's working class. It's a classic trick of his trade, a way of establishing an almost supernatural authority from the outset, inspiring awe and compliance in his patients. For you, it works. A part of you, despite the terror, is impressed. This man, for all his arrogance, seems to possess a knowledge that is beyond your comprehension. You find yourself leaning into his authority, hoping that his confidence is justified. You are now fully in his hands, a passive subject in his medical theater. Having established his almost mystical authority, Aurelius settles back into his grand chair, gesturing for the first time toward a simple wooden stool opposite him. "Sit," he commands. You obey immediately, perching on the edge of the stool, your hands clasped nervously in your lap. The physician leans forward, his expression now that of a master tutor about to educate a particularly slow student. He is not just here to cure you, he is here to enlighten you. For him, the two acts are inseparable. "To understand your specific malady," he begins, his voice taking on a formal, lecturing tone, "you must first understand the fundamental principles of the human body. To think of your cough or your fever as the disease itself is a common error of the ignorant. They are merely symptoms, the outward smoke of an internal fire. The true disease is an imbalance." He pauses, letting the word hang in the air. "Your body, like the world itself, is composed of four fundamental elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Each of these has a corresponding quality: cold, hot, dry, and wet. Are you following?" You nod mutely, trying to keep up. The concepts feel both simple and impossibly abstract. You have never thought of your body in such terms. Your body is just your body. It works, or it doesn't. Aurelius seems to see the confusion on your face and continues, a hint of impatience in his voice. "Within your body, these elements and their qualities are manifested as four fluids or humors." He holds up one finger. "First, there is blood. It is hot and wet like the air in springtime. It is associated with a sanguine or cheerful temperament." He holds up a second finger. "Then there is yellow bile. It is hot and dry like the fire of summer. It governs a choleric or angry temperament." A third finger joins the others. Third is black bile. It is cold and dry like the earth in autumn. It produces a melancholic or sad temperament. Finally, he holds up a fourth finger. And last, there is phlegm. It is cold and wet like the water of winter. It is responsible for a phlegmatic or calm temperament. He lowers his hand and leans back, a self-satisfied look on his face. Health, he proclaims, is nothing more than the perfect balance of these four humors, a state we call eucrasia. Sickness, or dyscrasia, is the result of one or more of these humors being in excess or deficiency. It is that simple and that profound. This was the core of Galenic medicine, a theory that dominated Western medical thought for more than 1,500 years. It was an elegant, all-encompassing system that seemed to explain everything, from personality to disease, from diet to the changing of the seasons. Its longevity is a testament to its intellectual appeal and internal consistency, even if, to modern ears, it sounds like pure fantasy. Every aspect of your life, he continues, warming to his topic, affects this delicate balance. The food you eat, the air you breathe, the amount you sleep, your emotional state, even the stars under which you were born. My task as a physician is not to merely chase away a symptom. My task is to identify which humor is out of balance and to guide your body back to its natural equilibrium. He gestures around the room, at his jars of herbs and his gleaming instruments. All of this, he says, is in service to that one great principle. You find yourself both mesmerized and terrified by his certainty. The system he describes is so complete, so logical within its own framework, that it is hard to argue with. It has the power of a grand, unifying theory. And yet, it also feels deeply impersonal. He is not talking about you, the person who lives in a cramped apartment and works at a loom. He is talking about a collection of abstract fluids, a microcosm of the universe that happens to be temporarily residing in your skin. Your individual life story, your specific pains, are just data points to be fed into his grand humoral equation. He then begins to connect the theory to your present condition. A fever, such as the one you are clearly experiencing, he explains, is a sign of excess heat. A simpleton might stop there, but I ask, is it a dry heat or a moist heat? Is it the clean, burning fire of yellow bile, or is it the simmering, swampy heat of blood boiling? A chill, like the one that makes you shiver, suggests an upwelling of a cold humor fighting against the heat. Your cough, is it a dry, hacking cough, or a wet, productive one? These are the questions the true physician must ask. He hasn't actually asked you any of these questions directly, of course. He is merely demonstrating his thought process. The entire time he speaks, his eyes are fixed on you, assessing, categorizing. It is an unnerving experience, feeling yourself being deconstructed into a set of elemental qualities and fluids. The headache that is pounding behind your eyes is no longer just a headache. It is a potential sign of vapors rising to the brain. The gritty bread you ate this morning is no longer just a poor meal. It was a cold and dry substance, a fact that will soon become very relevant to your diagnosis. You came here seeking comfort and a cure. Instead, you have received a lecture on cosmic philosophy, a lesson that has made you feel smaller and more fragile than ever, a tiny vessel tossed on a sea of humors, entirely at the mercy of the man who claims to be its navigator. Now that the theoretical groundwork has been laid, Aurelius signals that it is time for the practical part of the examination to begin. The theatrical observation and philosophical lecture are over. It is time to gather the specific data his system requires. He claps his hands once, a sharp sound that makes you jump. The young apprentice, who had been lingering silently by the curtain, immediately steps forward. Prepare for the sphygmological assessment, Aurelius commands. The apprentice nods and disappears for a moment, returning with a small clepsydra, a Roman water clock which he places on the table. "Give me your arm," Aurelius says. You hesitantly extend your right arm, and he takes your wrist. His grip is surprisingly firm, his fingers cool against your feverishly hot skin. This is the first time he has touched you, and the contact is jarring after his long, detached assessment. He places 3 fingers firmly over the artery in your wrist, his brow furrowed in intense concentration. He closes his eyes. The room falls silent, the only sound the faint, steady dripping of water within the clock. This is not a simple counting of your heart rate. A Galenic pulse lore was an incredibly complex art form. Galen himself wrote 17 books on the subject of the pulse alone. Aurelius is not just feeling the speed. He is assessing a dozen different qualities. He is feeling for its size, large or small, its speed, fast or slow, its strength, strong or weak, its hardness, hard or soft, and the rhythm and duration of each beat. He might describe a pulse as ant-like, scurrying, or gazelle-like, each term a specific diagnostic indicator. This detailed analysis, he believes, is a direct conversation with the body's vital essence. He remains like this for what feels like an eternity, his head tilted as if listening to a faint, secret music. The steady drip, drip, drip of the water clock is the only thing marking the passage of time. His concentration is absolute. He is a scholar reading a difficult text, and that text is you. You dare not move, hardly daring to breathe, for fear of disturbing his delicate work. Your own heart hammers erratically against your ribs, a frantic rhythm you are sure he can feel. You wonder what he is hearing in the flow of your blood. Is it a tale of anger, of sadness, of impending doom? The process is so intimate, yet so clinical, that it makes your skin crawl. Finally, with a soft sigh, he releases your wrist. He opens his eyes and looks not at you, but at a point on the wall just over your head, gathering his thoughts. "The pulse is rapid, yet weak," he murmurs. "It is dichrotic, a double beat, like a faint echo following the primary impulse. It suggests a conflict. The heat of the fever is attempting to rise, but it is being dragged down by a viscous, heavy humor. The vital spirit struggles. He makes it sound like a great battle is taking place within your arm. Before you can process this, he moves on to the next, and arguably most important diagnostic tool in his arsenal. He turns to the apprentice. "The vessel," he says simply. The apprentice retrieves a clean, wide-mouthed glass flask from a shelf and hands it to you. Aurelius looks at you expectantly. "Your water," he says, as if it were the most normal request in the world. "We must examine it." You stare at him, then at the flask, a flush of embarrassment warming your face despite your fever. There is a small, curtained-off corner of the room with a ceramic pot for this purpose. The apprentice points you toward it. The entire process is deeply mortifying. There is no concept of a private bathroom, no sterile cup from a sealed bag. Humiliated, you retreat behind the curtain, perform the necessary task, and return with the still warm flask, which you hand to the apprentice, avoiding eye contact with either of them. Aurelius takes the flask and begins what can only be described as a full sensory analysis of your urine. This is uroscopy, a cornerstone of diagnosis for centuries to come. He holds the flask up to the light from the window, observing its color and clarity with the intensity of a jeweler examining a gem. A pale straw color, he notes, but with a certain turbidity. There are nubiculi little clouds suspended within. He swirls the liquid gently, watching how the clouds move. They drift slowly, lazily. They do not dissipate. This points to a cold and moist pathology. Then, to your absolute horror, he unstoppers the flask and wafts the air toward his nose, taking a delicate sniff. The aroma is faint, not sharp or pungent, which would suggest an excess of bile. It is bland, almost sweet. And then, though you can hardly believe your eyes, he dabs a tiny drop onto his finger and touches it to his tongue. His face remains impassive, a notable lack of saline quality, verifying the dominance of the phlegmatic principle. You are frozen on your stool, a tableau of shock and disgust. He just tasted it. While shocking, this wasn't unheard of. Some physicians believe the taste could provide crucial information about the body's internal state, a practice that, bizarrely, foreshadowed the much later understanding of conditions like diabetes, where urine becomes sweet. He sets the flask down with an air of finality. The examination is over. He has read your pulse and interrogated your water. He has all the evidence he needs. He leans back in his chair, placing his fingertips together to form a steeple, and looks at you with an expression of grim satisfaction. He has solved the puzzle. He has unraveled the mystery of your suffering. Now, all that remains is to pronounce his verdict. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. Aurelius allows the silence to hang in the air for a moment longer, a calculated pause designed to heighten the weight of his impending diagnosis. You sit stiffly on the stool, your earlier humiliation giving way to a new, more focused anxiety. Everything, the theatrical observation, the lecture on humors, the intense probing of your pulse and the invasive inspection of your urine, has led to this single moment. The physician clears his throat, adopting the tone of a magistrate delivering a final, unassailable judgment. The evidence is conclusive, he announces, his gaze steady and unwavering. Your ailment, while presenting with the common symptom of fever, is not a simple disease of heat. That is merely the surface disturbance. The root cause, the true source of your dyscrasia, is a dangerous overabundance of phlegm. He says the word phlegm as if it were a venomous creature. To you, phlegm is just the unpleasant stuff you cough up when you have a cold. To him, it is a cosmic force, a fundamental element of your being that has run amok. Phlegm, he continues, leaning forward as if sharing a great secret, is, as you now understand, inherently cold and wet. Your body is attempting to fight this excess. It is generating heat, your fever, in an effort to cook and expel the surplus humor. But the phlegm is too abundant, too viscous. It is overwhelming your natural defenses. It is, in essence, dampening your vital fire. He paints a vivid picture of your insides as a soggy, smoldering campfire, struggling to stay lit. It's a strangely compelling image, and in your feverish state, it almost makes a bizarre kind of sense. We saw the evidence in your pulse, he explains, ticking the points off on his fingers. It was weak and struggling, weighed down by the heavy, sluggish nature of the phlegmatic humor. We saw it most clearly in your water. Its pale color, its cloudy consistency, its slow-moving sediment, all classic signs of phlegm's corrupting influence. Even the lack of a sharp odor and salty taste confirms that the hot, dry humors like yellow bile are in retreat. He has woven all his observations into a single, coherent narrative of disease. It's a story in which you are the setting and a substance called phlegm is the villain. He looks at you intently. This is a precarious situation. If we do not act decisively, the phlegm will continue to accumulate. It will rise to your head, causing confusion and stupor. It will settle in your lungs. He gestures toward your chest, making your cough worse and your breathing impossible. It could, in time, extinguish your innate heat entirely. That is the path to death. The casual, matter-of-fact way he says the final word sends a fresh wave of chills through you, colder than any your fever has yet produced. This diagnosis, as strange as it sounds, is the direct and logical outcome of his entire worldview. It is a perfect example of Galenic reasoning. He hasn't identified a virus or a bacteria. He has identified an imbalance in a theoretical system. The treatment, therefore, will not be aimed at killing a pathogen, but at correcting that imbalance. His entire therapeutic strategy will be based on a simple, elegant principle: the doctrine of opposites. This idea, that diseases should be treated with remedies possessing the opposite qualities, was ancient even in Galen's time, but he refined it into a medical dogma. Therefore, Aurelius concludes, his voice ringing with renewed authority, our course of action is clear. Your illness is one of cold and wet. We must therefore fight it with that which is hot and dry. We will drive out the cold. We will dry up the damp. We will restore the balance. He says this with the confidence of a general laying out a battle plan. There is no room for doubt, no hint of uncertainty. He has diagnosed the enemy, and now he will prescribe the weapons to defeat it. You are left speechless, caught between the terror of the diagnosis and a sliver of hope inspired by his absolute confidence. He may be arrogant, he may be bizarre, but he has a plan. And right now, a plan feels like the only thing that can save you from the phlegmatic tide he claims is rising within you. You cling to his certainty like a drowning person clings to a piece of driftwood, praying that his map of your inner world is accurate. The fate of your health, your savings, and possibly your life now rests entirely on his theory of opposites. Having delivered his grim diagnosis and outlined his grand strategy, Aurelius now transitions from philosopher to commander, laying out the specific tactics for your war against phlegm. The first and most fundamental front in this war is your diet. He turns his attention to what you will, and more importantly, what you will not be allowed to consume. His expression becomes even more severe, as if he is personally offended by the very existence of the foods he is about to forbid. The first step is to cease poisoning yourself, he declares bluntly. Your current diet, I can surmise, is one of cool, moist, and phlegm-producing foods. The bread, the watery wine, likely boiled vegetables, perhaps some cheese, all of it must stop, immediately. He dismisses your entire subsistence diet with a wave of his hand. It's not just unpalatable to him, it's pathologically incorrect. You might as well be drinking pure phlegm from a cup. He leans forward, his eyes narrowed. From this moment on, you will consume only foods that are powerfully hot and dry in their intrinsic nature. We will stoke your internal furnace. We will turn your body into a desert to dry up this flood of morbid fluid. He begins to list the prescribed menu, and it sounds less like a diet for a sick person and more like a feast for a warrior. You will eat meat, he commands. Roasted, not boiled. Preferably something tough and stringy like goat or aged beef. The flesh of wild animals is superior to that of domestic ones, as their nature is more vigorous and dry. The thought of roasted meat makes your stomach turn. The last thing you want with a fever and a sore throat is tough, heavy food. But his list continues, growing more specific and more intimidating. Your meat will be heavily seasoned. Pepper is essential. Its heat is legendary. We will use it liberally. Also, garlic, onions, and mustard seed. All are hot. All are dry. They are medicine in the form of food. He speaks of these common seasonings as if they were potent drugs, which, in his system, they are. Weird history food was not just about exotic tastes. For the Romans, it was about a complex system of health and balance. The idea of food as medicine was central to their entire approach to well-being. For drink, he continues, you will abandon that wretched, watery swill you call wine. You will procure an old, dark wine, one that is potent and astringent. A wine with years behind it has shed its moist, youthful qualities and has become a dry, fiery spirit. You will mix it with very little water, or ideally, none at all. The thought of drinking strong, undiluted wine in your feverish state makes your head spin, but you nod along, trying to memorize the instructions. There is no mention of simply drinking water. In his world, water is the archetypal cold and wet substance, the very essence of the enemy you are fighting. Avoid all fruits, especially watery ones like melons or plums. They are death to you now. If you must have a vegetable, let it be something that grows in a dry place like a root, and it must be roasted until it is hard. No leafy greens, no soft pulses. He is systematically dismantling any notion of what you might consider a gentle, soothing diet for an invalid. He is prescribing an assault. His dietary plan is a reflection of his medical philosophy. Aggressive, theory-driven, and completely dismissive of the patient's actual comfort or appetite. There is no concept of comfort food here. There is only philosophically correct food. You try to picture yourself eating this meal. A plate of tough, peppery goat meat, a side of roasted onions washed down with strong, sour wine. Your throat feels like sandpaper, and your stomach is a tight knot of nausea. The very thought of forcing down such a meal is nauseating. And then there's the practical problem, the cost. Pepper was an expensive imported luxury. Aged wine was far dearer than the cheap stuff you drank. Meat was a rare treat, not a daily staple. This prescription is not just a physical challenge. It is a financial catastrophe. The coins in your pouch, which seemed so significant this morning, now feel pitifully inadequate. You must look as desperate as you feel because a flicker of something, not quite sympathy but perhaps pragmatic understanding, crosses his face. "These are not suggestions," he says, his voice softening only slightly. "They are imperatives. Your life depends on altering your internal landscape. Scrape together what you can. Find a way. The alternative is to surrender to the phlegm." He stands, signaling the end of the dietary consultation. This is the first step, but diet alone in a case this advanced is insufficient. Your body is too full of the offending humor. We must also remove it directly. The way he says this, with a grim finality, tells you that the most unpleasant part of your visit is yet to come. With the dietary commands issued, Aurelius turns to the next phase of your treatment, the preparation of specific remedies. He doesn't intend for you to simply eat your way back to health. He will augment the dietary assault with potent, concentrated concoctions designed to further heat and dry your system. He walks over to the crowded shelves that line the wall, the ones that intimidated you so much when you first walked in. Now he views them with the familiarity of a master chef in his pantry. He scans the rows of jars and bundled herbs, murmuring to himself. Hyssop, good for the lungs. Pepper, of course, a double measure. A touch of castor oil for its purgative quality. He selects several small clay jars, their surfaces grimy with dust and stained from previous use. He hands them to his apprentice, along with a small piece of papyrus and a stylus. He begins to dictate a list, and the apprentice dutifully scratches the items down in a hurried script. The list is a bizarre collection of substances that sound more like the ingredients for a magical spell than a medical prescription. 2 parts dried ginger root ground to a fine powder, he begins. 1 part long pepper, half a part of crushed mustard seed, a pinch of myrrh for its drying properties. He pauses, tapping a finger against his chin, and a measure of galbanum. Its scent is pungent, its nature fiery. He adds a few more items to the list, things you've never even heard of, exotic-sounding substances that must have traveled a great distance to end up in this dusty room in Rome. He then turns to you, handing the small, stiff piece of papyrus to you. Take this to an herb seller, a pharmacopoeia. There is a reputable one 2 streets over near the spice market. He will have what you need. He will measure out the ingredients for you. Bring them back here. The apprentice will show you how to prepare the infusion. The instruction is clear. You are not just the patient. You are also the errand boy. The idea of navigating the chaotic streets again in your weakened state is daunting, but you don't dare question him. Clutching the papyrus note and the pouch of coins that feels lighter by the minute, you make your way back out into the city. The sensory assault of the street feels even more intense now, amplified by your fever and the stress of the consultation. The smells are sharper, the sounds more jarring. You follow the physician's directions, your mental map of the city guiding you through the labyrinthine alleys. The journey feels surreal, as if you are floating through a bad dream. You soon arrive at the area he described. The air here is thick with a new set of smells, a powerful and dizzying blend of exotic spices. The sweet scent of cinnamon, the sharp tang of cloves, and the earthy aroma of cumin hang heavy in the air. You locate the stall of the pharmacopoeia. It is not a clean, orderly pharmacy, but a dark, cluttered cave of a shop, open to the street. Sacks of seeds and roots are piled on the floor. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the ceiling like strange brown chandeliers, casting long shadows. The counter is a chaotic landscape of scales, mortars, pestles, and countless small wooden drawers, each presumably holding a different treasure from the natural world. The man behind the counter is old, with a long, thin beard and eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of 1,000 remedies. He looks you up and down, his gaze lingering on your pale, sweaty face. He knows sickness when he sees it. Without a word, you hand him the papyrus note. He holds it close to his face, squinting at the apprentice's script. He grunts in recognition. "Ah, a prescription from Aurelius," he says, his voice raspy. "Another one drowning in phlegm, I see." The casualness of his comment is unsettling. For him, your life-threatening condition is just a routine transaction. He turns to his drawers, his movements slow but precise. He pulls out a pinch of this, a scoop of that, weighing each ingredient on a small bronze balance scale. He scoops dried, gnarled ginger root from a sack and crushes it in a heavy stone mortar, the rhythmic grinding sound filling the small shop. He scrapes a dark, resinous substance from a large block, the galbanum, you presume. It has a strange, sharp green smell. He adds a few peppercorns, which look like tiny black jewels. He works with a quiet, focused intensity, a craftsman assembling the components of his trade. As you watch him, you're struck by the sheer faith this system requires. You are about to pay for a collection of roots, seeds, and resins, based on the word of an arrogant physician, who bases his beliefs on a 200-year-old theory from a Greek doctor named Galen, who in turn based his ideas on even older philosophers. There is no proof, no trial data, no concept of a second opinion. There is only a long chain of received wisdom. Historians often debate the efficacy of these ancient remedies. While many plants used did have active biochemical properties, their application was based on a flawed theoretical model. A plant was chosen not because it was proven to, say, reduce inflammation, but because it was classified as hot or dry. Sometimes, by sheer luck, the philosophy and the pharmacology aligned. Often they did not. The herb seller finishes his work. He tips the mixture of powders and crushed bits into a small linen bag and ties it shut. He names a price. It is, as you feared, a significant sum. It takes another sizable portion of the coins from your pouch. You hand them over, your hand trembling slightly. He takes them without ceremony and drops them into a wooden box. You are now the possessor of a small, fragrant bag of expensive dust. This, combined with a diet of goat meat and old wine, is supposed to save you. You thank the old man, your voice a hoarse whisper, and turn to make the journey back to the Iatrean, feeling poorer, sicker, and more lost in this strange world of medicine than ever before. You stumble back into the iatrain, the little linen bag of expensive herbs clutched in your sweaty palm. The waiting room is emptier now. The mother and her sick child are gone, as is the man with the bandaged arm. Only one old man remains, huddled on the bench, muttering to himself. The apprentice takes the bag from you without a word and disappears behind the curtain. You stand in the middle of the room, expecting to be sent away with instructions on how to brew your medicinal tea. But the curtain sweeps aside again and Aurelius stands there, his expression more serious than ever. "The diet will begin to alter the terrain," he says, his voice low and grave. "The infusion will provide the fiery humors your body lacks. But these measures are slow. Your condition is acute. The sheer volume of the corrupt, phlegmatic humor is too great. It is like trying to dry a flooded field with a single torch. We cannot simply wait for it to evaporate. We must drain the field." A cold dread, entirely different from your feverish chills, begins to seep into your bones. You know with a sudden, sickening certainty what he is about to say. The sight of the gleaming bronze tools on the side table flashes in your mind. "We must let blood," Aurelius declares. The words land like stones in the quiet room. Bloodletting. You have heard of it, of course. Everyone has. It is one of the most common medical procedures, used for almost everything, from headaches to fevers to madness. Some people swear by it, claiming to feel lighter and healthier afterward. Others tell stories of weakness, of fainting, of wounds that festered and refused to heal. It is the ultimate tool in the Galenic arsenal, the most direct and dramatic way to intervene in the body's humoral economy. If you have too much of a humor, the logic is simple: take it out. "Your blood," he explains, seeing the terror on your face and choosing to interpret it as ignorance, "is the carrier of all the other humors. It is the river in which they flow. By opening a vein, we will not only reduce the overall volume of fluid in your body, but we will specifically drain away the excess phlegm that is congesting the channels and suffocating your spirit." This was a key, if slightly confusing, part of the theory. Though he diagnosed you with excess phlegm, he prescribes the removal of blood. This is because phlegm was thought to be mixed with the blood, and blood was the easiest humor to access and remove. Scholars point out this seeming contradiction, but to a Galenist, it made perfect sense. You drain the whole river to lower the level of a pollutant. He gestures to the high table, the one that looks disturbingly like an altar. "Lie down," he commands. There is no negotiation. There is no asking for a different option. To refuse now would be to question his entire diagnosis, to throw his philosophy back in his face. It would be an insult to his expertise and, in his view, a form of medical suicide. Your fear of the procedure is now locked in a desperate struggle with your fear of the disease he has so vividly described. You think of his words: "Extinguish your innate heat entirely." The fear of that slow, phlegmatic death is, just barely, greater than your fear of the blade. With trembling legs, you walk to the table and hoist yourself onto it. The linen sheet is cool and surprisingly clean, though you see a few faint, brownish stains from previous patients. You lie on your back, staring up at the smoke-stained ceiling. The apprentice comes over with a leather strap. He wraps it tightly around your upper arm, cinching it until the pressure is deeply uncomfortable. The veins on the inside of your elbow begin to swell, becoming thick, dark blue ropes under your skin. Aurelius approaches, his face a mask of professional concentration. He rolls up the sleeves of his fine linen tunic, a practical gesture that is somehow more terrifying than all his philosophical pronouncements. He selects his instrument. It is not a scalpel, but a fleam, a small, sharp blade set at a right angle to a handle. It is designed for venesection, for quickly and efficiently opening a vein. He runs his thumb over the bulging veins in your arm, searching for the perfect candidate. The cephalic vein, he murmurs to himself. Yes, a direct path from the head. It will help clear the vapors that cloud your mind. He holds the fleam poised over your arm. The apprentice stands ready with a bronze bowl, the same kind he was cleaning when you first arrived. The metallic scent you noticed earlier is suddenly overpowering. You realize now what it was: the smell of old blood. You close your eyes, your heart pounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against your ribs. You try to remember why you are here. You think of your small room, the feel of your rough blanket, the taste of gritty bread. You are doing this so you can return to that life. The thought is not as comforting as you'd hoped. A small prick, Aurelius says, his voice attempting to be reassuring but failing completely. Stay calm. A turbulent spirit will disturb the humors as they exit. You try to empty your mind, to become as still and silent as the dust motes dancing in the shaft of light from the window. You take a final, shaky breath, and you wait for the sting of the metal. The entire history of medicine, with all its grand theories and brutal practices, has converged on this single, terrifying point in your arm. You don't have to wait long. There is no anesthetic, no soothing words, no countdown. There is only the swift, sharp, biting pain as Aurelius strikes the fleam against your vein. It's a deeper, more sickening pain than a simple cut, a violation that travels up your arm. You cry out, a strangled gasp, your body instinctively trying to pull away, but the apprentice is there, his hands firmly on your shoulder, holding you down. The physician works quickly, withdrawing the blade, and a stream of dark, crimson blood immediately begins to well up and pour from the incision. The apprentice is ready with the bronze bowl, catching the flow. The sound of your life force splashing into the metal container is a soft, rhythmic patter, a horrifying counterpoint to the frantic drumming of your own heart. You force your eyes open and look. The blood is shockingly red, almost black in the dim light of the room. It looks so vital, so alive, and it is all leaving you. You can't tear your gaze away. This is the morbid humor, the corrupted fluid that Aurelius spoke of, but it looks exactly like the blood you've seen from a scraped knee or a cut finger. Aurelius watches the process with the detached focus of a craftsman. He is not looking at your face, at the sweat beading on your forehead or the fear in your eyes. He is looking at the blood itself, assessing its color, its consistency, and how quickly it flows. See how dark it is, he says to his apprentice, his voice filled with academic interest. That is the phlegmatic contamination. It is thick, sluggish. Good, healthy blood flows more freely and has a brighter, more cheerful color. He is narrating the proof of his own theory as it drains out of you. You try to turn your head away to stare back up at the ceiling, but a wave of dizziness washes over you. The room begins to feel distant, the sounds muffled, as if you are sinking underwater. The physician's voice and the patter of the blood into the bowl seem to be coming from very far away. A cold sweat breaks out all over your body, and your breath comes in shallow, rapid gasps. You feel light, insubstantial, as if you are beginning to float off the table. "He is weakening," the apprentice notes, his voice flat. "That is to be expected," Aurelius replies calmly. "It is the corrupt humor leaving the body. The spirit is momentarily disoriented by its departure. It is a sign that the treatment is working." In his framework, your fainting spell is not a sign of shock or dangerous blood loss. It is a positive therapeutic outcome. Many patients likely experienced this, and it was consistently reinterpreted as a successful purging. The amount of blood being taken is not trivial. There were no standardized measurements, but physicians often bled patients until they fainted, believing this was the point at which the morbid humors had been sufficiently evacuated. The bowl is starting to look alarmingly full. Historians examining medical texts from the period are often shocked by the sheer quantity of blood that was sometimes recommended for removal, amounts that modern medicine would consider life-threatening. Your vision begins to tunnel. The edges of the room are fading to black, the single shaft of light from the window shrinking to a small, bright point. You feel a profound weakness in your limbs, a heavy, leaden feeling that makes it impossible to even lift a finger. This is not the feeling of being healed. This is the feeling of being emptied. The line between curing the disease and killing the patient feels terrifyingly thin. "That is sufficient," Aurelius finally declares. The pattering sound stops. The apprentice immediately presses a thick pad of linen against the wound in your arm, applying firm pressure. The sudden cessation of the flow is a relief, but the profound weakness remains. The apprentice skillfully binds the pad in place with a long strip of cloth, creating a tight bandage. The procedure is over. You lie on the table, utterly spent. The throbbing in your head has been replaced by a hollow, ringing emptiness. The fever still seems to be there, a distant fire, but you are too weak to shiver. You feel scoured out, a shell of your former self. A part of you wonders if the physician was right, if some essential part of your illness has been poured into that bronze bowl. But mostly, you just feel a vast, overwhelming sense of depletion. You have paid for your treatment not just with the coins from your pouch, but with the very substance of your own body. Aurelius looks down at you, a faint, satisfied smile on his face. He sees not a terrified, weakened patient, but a successful outcome, a body brought one step closer to balance. "The primary corruption has been removed," he announces. "Now we must ensure the wound remains clean and that the lingering ill humors are drawn out. The treatment, you realize with a sinking heart, is still not over." Lying on the table, you feel as though you are floating in a sea of exhaustion. The world comes back to you slowly, in hazy waves of sound and sensation. The sharp, metallic smell still hangs in the air, but now it's mixed with the scent of your own blood. The apprentice has taken the bowl away, but the image of it, dark and full, is seared into your mind. You are too weak to sit up, and the thought of moving seems like an impossible task. Aurelius, however, is already preparing the next stage of your treatment. The bloodletting was a dramatic, large-scale evacuation. Now comes the local, more subtle work. The venesection opens a gate for the bad humors to escape, he explains, more to his apprentice than to you. But we must encourage the dregs to follow. We will apply a plaster that will draw out any remaining morbid fluid and prevent the wound from closing with unclean spirits trapped inside. He turns back to his shelves of wonders. This time he is not selecting herbs for an internal remedy, but ingredients for a topical poultice. The components he chooses are, if anything, even more bizarre than those for the infusion. He ignores jars of what look like soothing salves and instead gathers items that seem better suited for a farmer's field than a physician's clinic. The ancient world had a vast pharmacopoeia, and not all of it was pleasant. Some of the most common ingredients in poultices and plasters were animal products, including excrement. To your growing horror, you watch as the apprentice begins to mix the concoction in a small stone mortar. The primary ingredient appears to be dried, pulverized animal dung. The physician might specify pigeon droppings for one ailment, goat dung for another, each believed to have a unique thermal and humoral property. To this, the apprentice adds a scoop of what looks like ash, a sprinkle of the herbal powder you brought back from the pharmacopoeia, and a dollop of honey to act as a binder. He begins to grind it all together with a pestle, creating a thick, dark, and foul-smelling paste. The smell wafts over to you, a pungent, earthy stench that makes your already queasy stomach heave. It smells of the barnyard and the spice market all at once, a truly nauseating combination. This is what he intends to put on your open wound. The logic, from a Galenic perspective, was that substances like dung were considered powerfully drawing. They were believed to have a property that could pull evil humors out of the body through the skin or a wound. In a strange twist, historians and scientists have speculated that some of these substances, particularly certain types of dung, might have contained molds or bacteria that produced natural antibiotic agents, like penicillin. It is a fascinating and weird historical food for thought. A disgusting, illogical treatment might have occasionally worked, but for entirely the wrong reasons. A case of being right by accident. The apprentice brings the mortar over, the dark green-brown paste glistening within. Aurelius carefully unties the bandage on your arm, revealing the small, dark slit of the incision. It has stopped bleeding, but the area around it is already beginning to look bruised and swollen. With a small, flat spatula, the physician scoops up a generous glob of the revolting poultice. You flinch as he brings it toward you, your mind screaming in protest. Everything in you rebels against the idea of putting filth into an open cut. He applies it directly to the wound. It is warm and surprisingly gritty. The smell is overwhelming. He smears it on thickly, covering the incision and the surrounding skin. Then he takes a large, soft cabbage leaf, which has been wilted slightly over a flame, and places it over the paste. The cabbage leaf acts as a natural, pliable covering. Finally, he takes a fresh linen bandage and wraps the entire affair tightly, securing the poultice in place. Your arm now feels heavy, warm, and profoundly unclean. You are bandaged and treated, but you have never felt more contaminated in your life. The contrast between his fine linen tunic and the dung he has just smeared on your arm is a dizzying paradox. This is the height of Roman medical science, a sophisticated, all-encompassing philosophy of the cosmos, culminating in the application of animal waste to an open wound. There, Aurelius says with deep satisfaction, stepping back to admire his handiwork. This will prevent putrefaction and draw out the lingering coldness. Keep it on for 2 days. Do not disturb it, and adhere strictly to the diet I prescribed. The combination of internal heat and external drawing will set your humors right. He begins to wash his hands in a basin of water, a ritual of purification that feels deeply ironic given what he has just done. He finally turns his attention fully to you, the patient. His tone shifts from that of a scientist to that of a businessman. He names his fee. It is, as you expected, astronomical. It is almost every coin you had in your pouch. With a hand that still trembles from weakness, you reach for the pouch, empty its meager contents onto the table. The physician counts it without emotion, then sweeps it into a drawer. Your journey to the doctor has now cost you your savings and a significant portion of your blood. You are left with a bag of herbs, a list of expensive foods you can't afford, and a foul-smelling poultice on your arm. The transaction is complete. The apprentice helps you sit up on the edge of the table. The world lurches violently, and for a moment, you're certain you're going to slide off onto the floor. The ringing in your ears is louder now, a high, thin sound. Your body feels alien to you, light-headed and heavy-limbed all at once. The arm with the poultice throbs with a dull, persistent ache, and the smell of the dung and herb mixture rises from the bandage, a constant, nauseating reminder of the treatment. You feel 1,000 times worse than when you first walked through the physician's door this morning. Aurelius gives you a final, dismissive nod. Go home, rest, follow the regimen. The crisis has been averted. He has already turned away, his attention shifting to rearranging the jars on his shelf. For him, the case is closed, a success. You are no longer his concern. You are just another body that has been processed through his system of humors and opposites. You slide off the table, your feet finding the floor with an unsteady thud. The apprentice offers no assistance, simply watching you with his impassive gaze as you steady yourself against the wall. Pushing aside the curtain, you re-enter the main room. The old man who was muttering on the bench is gone now. The Iatrean is empty, save for you and the lingering ghosts of the day's suffering. The short walk to the main door feels like crossing a vast desert. Each step is an effort of will. You are profoundly weak, your body screaming in protest, but you know you cannot stay here. You have to get back to your room. It's the only sanctuary you have. You push the door open, and the street hits you with the force of a physical blow. If the city was a sensory assault before, now it is an unbearable torture. The afternoon sun, low in the sky, glares off a wall, stabbing at your eyes. The noise of the street, the shouting vendors, the rumbling carts, the ceaseless chatter, is a chaotic roar that hammers at your hollow-feeling head. The smells, the familiar stew of life and decay, now seem to churn your empty stomach. and you have to swallow hard against a wave of nausea. The journey home is a slow, agonizing stumble. You cling to the walls of buildings, using them for support. People brush past you, a river of bodies oblivious to your private agony. A group of boisterous young men, smelling of wine and sweat, jostle you as they pass, and you nearly lose your footing. They laugh, not out of malice, but simply because they haven't noticed you, a pale, trembling ghost in their vibrant world. You feel invisible in your misery. You pass the tavern again. The smell of roasting meat, which Aurelius prescribed as your medicine, now seems like the most revolting odor imaginable. You think of his dietary commands, the peppered goat, the strong wine, and a sense of profound hopelessness washes over you. You have no money left to buy such things. Your purse is empty. Even if you could afford them, you have no appetite, no strength to cook or eat such a meal. The physician's prescription, rooted in his world of theory and relative wealth, is completely disconnected from the reality of your life. It is a cure you cannot afford and cannot stomach. Your thoughts turn back to the gritty bread in your wooden chest. That simple, unsatisfying meal from this morning now seems like a lost luxury. You remember the watery wine. It was cold and wet, the very thing Aurelius railed against, but the thought of a cool drink is all you crave. His entire system, which seemed so logical and compelling in the quiet of his clinic, now feels like a cruel joke out here in the harsh reality of the street. He had deconstructed you into a collection of warring fluids, but he had failed to see the most important parts. A person who was scared, in pain, and poor. Every step is a victory. You navigate by instinct, your body moving on autopilot through the familiar turns. The final flight of stairs up to your room is a mountain. You have to pull yourself up by the railing, pausing on each step to catch your breath, your heart hammering weakly against your ribs. The journey that took minutes this morning takes an eternity now. Finally, you reach your door. You fumble with the latch, your fingers clumsy and weak. The door swings open. You stumble inside and collapse onto your thin mattress, not even bothering to remove your tunic or sandals. The small, stuffy room, which you left in a state of feverish anxiety, now feels like the safest harbor in the world. It is quiet, it is still, it is yours. You lie there utterly spent, a victim of both your illness and its supposed cure. You are weaker, poorer, and sicker than when you woke up. As you drift in and out of a dizzy, exhausted state, you can't help but wonder if you would have been better off just staying in bed. The resilience you felt this morning is gone, replaced by a deep and terrifying vulnerability. You have survived the doctor. Now you must survive the cure. You lie on the mattress, a ship run aground. The sounds of the city filter in, but they are muted now, distant echoes from another world. The argument from the neighboring room has ceased, and the blacksmith's hammer has fallen silent. The only sound is the soft whisper of your own shallow breathing. The last of the afternoon light fades from the high window, plunging your small room into a deep, comforting gloom. Your body is a landscape of misery. Your head throbs with a dull, vacant ache. Your arm is a nexus of pain, the foul poultice a warm, heavy weight upon it. And through it all, the fever still burns, a low, constant fire. You close your eyes, and the day replays in your mind not as a memory, but as a series of feverish, distorted images. You see the physician's stern, judging face, his fine linen tunic a stark white against the gloom. You see the glass flask of urine held up to the light, its cloudy contents swirling. You see the glint of the bronze phlegm, the shocking crimson of your own blood splashing into the bowl. You smell the pungent, sickening odor of the dung and herb paste. These images drift through your mind, untethered from time, fragments of a nightmare you have just lived through. The grand, elegant theory of the four humors, which Aurelius had laid out with such unshakable confidence, now seems like a madman's dream. You try to imagine the phlegm inside you, the cold, wet invader that he described. You try to believe that the bloodletting drained it away, that the stinking poultice is drawing out its dregs, that a diet of peppered meat could save you. But the logic that held you captive in his clinic dissolves in the reality of your own suffering. The theory is an elaborate story, a fiction imposed upon the raw, messy truth of the body. You were not a collection of humors. You were a sick person, and now you are a sick and wounded person. A profound loneliness settles over you. There is no one to bring you a cool cloth for your forehead, no one to check on you, no one to offer a word of comfort. In the vast, teeming metropolis of Rome, you are an island. This vulnerability was the reality for so many, a stark contrast to the Roman ideal of family and community. Sickness was often a solitary struggle, its outcome determined by the strength of one's constitution and the fickle hand of fate. As you drift on the edge of sleep, your mind wanders. You think of the gritty bread. Remember that gritty bread from this morning. It was your reality, simple, coarse, and imperfect. The physician had scorned it as a source of your illness, but it was also your sustenance. It was what kept you alive. His prescribed cure, the aged wine, the expensive spices, the choice cuts of meat, was a fantasy, a diet for a life you did not lead. In that moment, you feel a strange kinship with the bread. You are both humble, imperfect things, just trying to get by in a world of grand, unyielding forces. Despite the pain, the fear, and the utter depletion of your body and spirit, something small and stubborn begins to stir within you. It is not hope, not yet. It is the simple animal instinct to endure. It is the same resilience that gets you out of bed each morning, that sends you to the loom, that helps you navigate the chaotic streets. You have survived the city. You have survived the physician. You have survived his curse. Now there is only the fever left to fight on your own terms in the quiet of your room. You curl onto your side, pulling the coarse wool blanket up to your chin. It scratches, but it is familiar. It is real. You give yourself over to the fever, not in surrender, but in a kind of truce. You will let it burn, and you will endure the heat. Lying there in the deepening twilight, you finally drift into a fevered, restless sleep. A single, tenacious spark of life refusing to be extinguished by the grand, misguided theories of men. As you continue to drift, let the hard edges of that Roman room soften and fade. Let the echoes of the bustling street and the memory of the physician's stern voice dissolve into the quiet of your own peaceful space. The story of that day is a journey into a world both brilliant and brutal, a testament to the strange paths humanity has walked in its endless quest for healing. The theories of Galen, so bizarre to our ears, were not born of foolishness, but from a profound desire to make sense of the beautiful, terrifying mystery of the human body. It was an attempt to find order in the chaos of sickness, to map the unseen world within. Think of the immense gulf between that world and yours. The knowledge we now take for granted, of germs, of viruses, of the simple, miraculous power of hygiene, was a universe away. Their best intentions, guided by flawed philosophies, often led to more harm than good. And yet, within that harsh reality, people endured. They showed a remarkable resilience, a will to survive that transcends any single era. They built empires, created art of breathtaking beauty, and loved their families, all while navigating a world of gritty bread and humoral imbalances. As you settle deeper into your own comfort, feel a sense of gratitude for the quiet certainties of your own time. Appreciate the softness of your bed, the clean water you can drink, the simple knowledge that a fever is a symptom, not a cosmic battle between hot and cold. The struggles of the past cast a long shadow, and within that shadow, our own present comforts shine all the more brightly. Let the story of that ancient sufferer be a reminder of the peace you now enjoy. Let the echoes of history whisper you to sleep, secure in the knowledge that your own rest is safe, sound, and healing. Drift now into a deep and restorative slumber,